think I don't hear all that banging? You people just moved in and already ruining this street.
Man, we're just moving furniture, that's it.
I don't care what you call it. You don't belong here.
Please leave our property. We didn't do anything.
This is my street.
The first time it happened, no one could believe it. Late in the afternoon, the sound of pounding on walls and shouting cut through the quiet neighborhood like a storm. From their living room, Darnell Green and his family were just moving a couch to make room for a new rug. That was it, nothing more. But on the other side of the thin walls, someone else had already decided that this was a personal attack. By the time they checked the front door camera, the scene looked unreal. A white woman, face red with anger, was leaning into the camera, screaming words that made every nerve in Darnell's body freeze. Before I continue, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city in the comments. And while you're at it, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss a single chapter of this story. This one gets wild. Her name was Brenda Calloway. Brenda had lived 2 houses down for years and never cared to hide her contempt. But today, it boiled over into pure venom. She was shouting at Darnell and his wife, Tanya Green, as they moved a single love seat into a better spot. Her words were sharp, racist, hateful, accusing them of stealing air, making noise, and showing off. She cursed them in ways that made it clear she didn't even see them as neighbors, just as targets. The Greenses had done nothing. They had bought the home legally, were paying taxes, and had moved in quietly. But to Brenda, their presence was an insult. And she wasn't alone. Through the thin walls, other neighbors could hear her shouting. Some were frozen, some were calling the police, others filming her from their windows. Darnell's son, Elijah Green, stood by the window, watching his mother step aside, trying to calm the situation, while Brenda banged on the walls as if she could shake the house itself. Every curse and insult was caught on the door camera, which had a wide-angle lens showing her lunging forward, pointing at the house like a soldier marking territory. She was relentless. It didn't take long for the neighborhood to stir. People peeked out of their doors. A few recorded the scene on their phones. Some whispered, shaking their heads, "She's gone too far this time." Others feared she might escalate into something physical. The tension was like a wire stretched too tight. One small push could snap it completely. And that's exactly what was about to happen. Brenda's voice rose higher. She screamed, "You don't belong here. I've lived here my whole life. This is my street. You people bring trouble." Her words were heavy, laced with old resentments that seemed almost generational. Darnell didn't respond. He knew it wouldn't help. Tanya stepped between him and the door, signaling their kids to stay back. But even from inside, her voice shook. She had never faced someone this openly hostile, someone whose hate was so raw it could be felt like heat radiating through the walls. The door camera captured it all. Every step she took, every glare, every movement was recorded in high definition. Later, when Darnell replayed it, he could see the way her hands shook as she waved her fists. It wasn't just anger. It was fear masked as aggression, fear of losing the neighborhood to someone she deemed different. But in that moment, it didn't matter why she was screaming. What mattered was that her words were aimed directly at his family, in their own home, for nothing more than living there. And then something unexpected happened. The shouting drew someone new into the scene, a neighbor who had never intervened before. Martin Hill came out, standing at a safe distance. His phone was out, recording. He shouted over Brenda, trying to calm her down, but she ignored him. She turned to him, eyes blazing, and spat words that made him step back. The intensity of her hate was overwhelming. The police were on the way, but until they arrived, the family and anyone outside could only watch. Every insult, every racial slur, every curse was a public spectacle. And even though Darnell and his family tried to ignore her, the tension had entered their home like smoke in the walls. They could feel it, see it in the camera, hear it echo through the neighborhood. At that moment, a single thought ran through Darnell's mind. This is going to get worse before it gets better. The stage was set. Brenda had made it clear that she would not back down, that she would continue her attacks, and that she believed she had the right to terrorize anyone she saw as different. The camera at the door kept rolling, silently witnessing a scene no one in the neighborhood could ignore. This wasn't just a fight over furniture. This was a fight over ownership, over identity, over the audacity of a black family living where they chose. And Brenda was determined to make sure everyone knew who owned the street. By the time the police arrived, Brenda had retreated slightly but didn't stop screaming. The camera caught her turning toward the street, still shouting racial insults, still cursing the family for daring to exist in their own home. And as the police intervened, the Greenses realized something chilling. Even with witnesses and recordings, this was far from over. Brenda's anger wasn't just temporary. It was deeply rooted, and she would find new ways to attack. What happens next will take the story to an even more intense level, where threats turn into action, and the Greenses must face a reality they never imagined when they moved into what should have been a safe home. The next morning, the Greenses woke to an uneasy calm, but it was the kind of calm that whispers trouble. It didn't feel safe. Outside, the neighborhood looked normal. Cars parked neatly, lawns trimmed, no one in sight. But inside, every step, every creak of the floorboards, every distant car horn felt loaded with tension. Darnell checked the door camera again. What he saw made his stomach tighten. Brenda was back, not at the door this time. She was across the street, pacing in front of her house, eyes fixed on theirs like a predator marking territory. She shouted occasionally, words too faint to hear clearly, but her gestures were unmistakable. Pointing, waving, threatening. It was early, but she was already watching, waiting for the slightest movement inside the Greens' home. The kids, Elijah Green and his younger sister, Leela Green, avoided the windows. Even the usual comfort of home felt invaded. Darnell and Tanya tried to go about their morning, but the fear lingered like a heavy blanket. Every step they took was measured, every move deliberate, because Brenda could appear at any moment. By mid-morning, the tension exploded. Brenda's yelling returned, louder this time, and a crowd had gathered on the street, some neighbors curious, others filming, all eyes on the Greens' house. Brenda screamed insults at them, calling them loud, disrespectful, unfit for this neighborhood. Each word was like a hammer against the walls, a direct attack meant to break their spirits. Then it escalated further. Brenda's actions became physical. She picked up a small trash can and hurled it toward the driveway, barely missing the car. She stomped on the lawn, dragged chairs, knocked over flower pots, all while shouting racial slurs at the family inside. The door camera captured everything. The way her body moved, the rage in her face, the violence in her gestures. Every second of footage was evidence, yet nothing could stop the terror she was spreading. Tanya called the police again, but as she spoke, Brenda's shouting intensified. "Go back to where you came from," she screamed, waving her fists toward the house. "This isn't your place. You people don't belong here." Her voice echoed through the quiet morning, bouncing off walls and into the Greens' home. Darnell tried to remain calm, focusing on the camera feed. He could see Brenda clearly, her face twisted in fury, her fingers pointing aggressively, her feet stomping the grass like she wanted to crush something beneath them. But then something even more unsettling happened. Brenda started walking toward their driveway. The crowd that had formed on the street stepped back, but she moved forward, fearless, violent, ready to cross a line that could not be ignored. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Tanya froze, heart racing. The camera captured Brenda leaning close to the door, shouting through the glass, "I warned you. I'll make this street mine." Her words were venomous, filled with hatred that had no reason, no mercy. Her eyes locked on the camera as if she knew every movement was being recorded. But she didn't care. The intensity of her rage was unstoppable. Neighbors whispered among themselves, some calling out warnings, some retreating. Martin Hill, who had filmed her the day before, tried to step in, but Brenda turned her fury on him too. "Stay out of this. You don't get to tell me what to do. You don't belong here either." Her voice carried, sharp, threatening, full of racial contempt. The Greens' children clung to each other, watching their mother speak into the phone, speaking rapidly to 911 while keeping an eye on Brenda. Darnell's mind raced. He realized Brenda's actions were not just random. She was strategizing, trying to intimidate them into leaving, to assert control over the street. Every gesture, every scream, Every threat was calculated to break their sense of safety. By noon, the police arrived. Brenda, seeing them approach, took a step back, but her glare never left the Greens' house. The officers spoke with her briefly, warning her to calm down, but she argued, cursed, and spat threats, refusing to retreat. The door camera captured every second of this confrontation. Her aggression, her racial tirades, her insistence on claiming the neighborhood as hers. Even after the officers left, Brenda didn't disappear. She stayed across the street, glaring, pacing, ensuring the Greenses knew she had not backed down. And then came the next shock. She returned at night, when most people were asleep. The door camera recorded her sneaking around the side of the house, muttering threats under her breath, tapping on windows, leaving notes filled with hateful words. The Greenses found them in the morning, each one a reminder that Brenda's obsession had escalated beyond confrontation. It had become harassment. Darnell, watching the footage, realized something terrifying. This was not going to end with police warnings or a simple argument. Brenda's actions were deliberate, persistent, and racially motivated. She had made it clear that she believed she had the right to intimidate and threaten them, and that she would continue until she felt victorious. The Greenses trapped in a nightmare they could not control. Brenda had proven she was willing to escalate, her anger captured on camera, her hatred public and unrelenting. Every step they took now had to be cautious, calculated. Every glance outside the window carried tension, fear, and uncertainty. The door camera had recorded the most intense moments so far, and the family knew one thing with certainty: the next encounter would be even worse. Brenda's hatred was far from over, and the story of terror on their own street had only just begun. Night had fallen, but sleep was impossible for the Greenses. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind against the windows, every rustle of leaves sounded like Brenda's footsteps outside. Darnell checked the door camera again, and his stomach dropped. She was there, not pacing this time. She was crouched near the driveway, moving silently, as if plotting her next attack. The camera caught her in the shadows, face pale in the dim porch light, eyes burning with rage that had only grown since the last confrontation. It started subtly at first. Items in the yard were misplaced, trash bins tipped over, flower pots broken, even the welcome mat in front of the door ripped and tossed. Tanya discovered the damage early in the morning, and her heart sank. Brenda wasn't just shouting anymore. She was invading their property, marking territory like she had the right. Every move was intentional, every act a message. You are not welcome here. The intensity grew the next day. Brenda didn't just stand across the street anymore. She approached the driveway while recording herself on her phone, shouting at the family. Her words cut deep. This street belongs to people like me. You don't deserve to walk here. The racial slurs were constant, sharp, meant to humiliate and intimidate. The Greenses stayed inside, recording everything, but the fear in their home was suffocating. Even through the camera feed, they could feel her presence pressing against the walls. Then came the escalation no one expected. Around dusk, the doorbell rang repeatedly. Darnell opened the camera feed and froze. Brenda was standing there with a baseball bat in her hand, leaning into the camera and screaming. Her words were unmistakable, filled with rage and hatred. Move your things, or I'll make you regret it. The bat glinted under the porch light. The intensity of her gaze made it clear she was willing to use it. Tanya pressed the phone to her chest, shaking. Darnell, call the police now, she whispered, her voice trembling. But Darnell hesitated, fear and disbelief freezing him for a moment. He could see everything. The bat, her facial expressions, the way her body moved like a predator ready to strike. He replayed the door camera footage and realized that everything so far had been leading up to this moment. Brenda's anger had grown from shouting into threats of physical violence. Across the street, a small crowd had gathered again, some recording on phones, some shouting warnings. But Brenda ignored them all. She was locked on the Greens' house, fixated, consumed by a rage that no one could stop. The door camera captured every movement, the swing of her arm, the tense flex of her muscles, the hatred in her eyes. It was horrifying, yet mesmerizing, as if watching a storm about to crash down. By the time the police arrived, Brenda had stepped back slightly, But the message was clear. She was unrelenting, and everyone could see it. The officers warned her again, but she argued, cursed, and even spat toward the house. She refused to leave the street, and the Greenses realized this was no longer a neighborhood dispute. It had become an obsession. The most intense moment came late that night. The camera recorded her lurking near the side door, muttering racial insults, shaking her fists at the house. Then she kicked a small trash can against the wall, rattling the windows. The kids were terrified, clinging to their parents, watching the screen as the door camera recorded every moment. Tanya whispered, "She's insane. She's going to hurt us if we're not careful." It was at this point that Darnell realized something chilling. Brenda was escalating deliberately,